Hello and welcome back to Code Snippets. Today we're talking about inheritance and polymorphism, which is directly related to classes and objects. So this is a huge part of Java. It's a huge part of object-oriented program. So let's get into it. So right now I've got the driver class set up, which is just going to drive the program. It's not an actual driver, like a driver of a car, which might be confusing because we also have the automobile class. So we're just going to make a generic class that represents any automobile. So any car, truck, motorcycle, anything like that, that will be considered an automobile. So what can we use to describe an automobile? Well, here we can specify the number of tires because a car and a bike aren't going to have the same number of tires. We can also say the make, the model, the year, all of that, because those can still be used to classify any automobile. And we can throw in color in there as well. We can put the mileage, the MPG, and maybe a few other attributes if I think of them. But we'll just stick with this for now. So now we're going to create what are called subclasses. So I'm going to right-click our package, go to New, Class, and then here, let's create a car class. And on this line where it says Superclass, I'm going to make this automobile. So I'm just going to replace this with automobile. And then make sure this box right here is checked. So I'm going to click Finish. And now we have a new class called Car that extends automobile. So in order to be a car, you need to be an automobile. So now let's generate a constructor. So I'll leave this one in here. But let's right click and go down to Source and then generate constructor using fields. And now let's keep these and we'll get rid of the mileage and the MPG. Let's generate those. So now we have our constructor. And you can see the super is here again. We can delete that for automobile. Now let's create some subclasses. So I'm going to right click the package, go to New, Class, and we're going to create a car class. And now car, where it says superclass, we're going to make automobile the superclass. So I'm going to type that in. I'm going to make sure this box is checked right here, constructors from superclass. And I'm going to hit Finish. And now you see where it says super, it's got some data right here. So this is where it's important that we have super. And then we make sure to save that so that everything works together. So now what do we mean when we're saying that car extends automobile and this whole superclass and subclass nonsense? Well, let's go to Paint. And now let's say we have our automobile class. Now, automobile is the most generic term we can use, let's say. We could also have a car, and a truck, and a motorcycle. And all three of these are automobiles. They're just a more specific kind. So in order to be a car, you also have to be an automobile. Same for a truck or a motorcycle. But you wouldn't say that a car is a truck or a truck is a motorcycle. That just doesn't make sense. So that's why we have subclassing. So car, truck, and motorcycle are all considered subclasses of automobile. So let's do that. So we made our car class already. Let's right click, go to New, create another class. We'll make this our truck class. And lastly, we need a motorcycle class. Okay, so now some things we can also change. A motorcycle might have 2 or 3 wheels, but let's say a car always has 4 wheels. So we actually don't need to ask for this when we construct a new car. We can just pass in the number 4, because that will always be true. Let's go back to the automobile class. And we never set the mileage. So let's just say that the mileage will always start at 0. So now what's happening here, if we go to this car class, so we have our constructor that takes in the year, the make, the model, and the color. And then we have this super line. Well, super refers to the superclass, which is automobile, right here. So when we say super and then pass in for, year, make, model, and color, that's actually calling this constructor right here. So we're passing in for, which is the number of wheels, then the year, then the make, the model, and the color. And it's in the exact same order. So then the automobile takes this data and it constructs a new automobile object. And then we go back to the car class and we finish the rest of the constructor, whatever else we may need. So for a car, let's say we could have a sunroof or not. And then we would have a Boolean value inside car called has sunroof. Then we could say this dot has sunroof equals has sunroof. So this is a specific field that only describes car objects. If we go back here, cars can have a sunroof, but let's say trucks or motorcycles can't. So this is something specific to a car object. Whereas any of the fields in the automobile class, these can be used to describe any automobile, so cars, trucks, or motorcycles. That also means that these fields are available in the car class. So for example, when we create a new car, we can print out a message that displays that car's mileage. And as you can see, we don't get an error because mileage is being pulled from the automobile class right here. Even though mileage is mentioned nowhere else in this class, because we're extending automobile, we inherit this field. So that's the idea of inheritance. Anything that's part of a superclass will be passed down into a subclass. You'll also hear these referred to as the parent and child classes. So the automobile is the parent class, whereas the car, truck, and motorcycle classes are its children. If we wanted to add on some modifiers for each of the other classes, we could as well. So for this one, we could list the trailer type, and then ask for it in here. And in the motorcycle class, we could have something along the lines of whether or not there's a sidecar. And now all our classes are set up. So if we go to the driver class, we can sort of demonstrate some of these principles. First of all, we can create an automobile object. And we would have to pass in the number of wheels, the year, the make, the model, and the color. So let's say it has 4 wheels, 2020, and it's a Ram. We also need to specify the color. So let's say it's red. So now we've created a generic automobile object. So if we tried to, for example, access whether or not it has a sunroof, normally we would say a.has sunroof. But as you can see, this variable doesn't exist. Now if we made this a car object, first we'd have to get rid of the for here, because we no longer need that. But now we also need to specify either true or false for whether it has a sunroof. So let's say false. And now here it's just saying we need to actually do something with this in order for it to work. So let's print it out. And now it lets us. So if we run it, we get false. And this 0.0 was from when we created our car. It printed out the mileage. And we can do that here as well. So let me delete that from this line. And we're going to print out a.mileage. Let's run it again. And there we go. So if you create a subclass of some class, you can still access all of the features that were part of that parent class or that superclass. And that's the entire idea behind inheritance. We can just be more specific with what we're creating, while still not having to copy code 3 separate times, even if a car, a truck, and a motorcycle all share these properties right here. So we only have to write them once. And this is why we use inheritance. So not only can we inherit fields, but we can also inherit methods. So if we go into the automobile class and we create a method called drive, and it takes a number of miles and adds that to the mileage. If we go back to our driver class, here we have a car. So let's print out the mileage, and then let's say a.drive, and we'll drive for 200 miles. And then let's print out the mileage again. Let's run it. And now we went from 0 miles to 200 miles because we drove the car. And if you look, there is no drive method in the car class, but there is in the automobile class.